Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Hub meeting. And let's start to go through. So if we could have apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, members. We've got an apology from Councillor Moody for this afternoon's meeting. Thank you.
Right. And declarations of interest, anybody? No? If you could declare if something comes up in the meeting, please. Item requiring urgent attention. I don't have anybody. Does anyone else? No. Right. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of July. Pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Everybody happy to confirm those minutes? Second, please. Yeah, thank you. Right, item 5, public questions. I'm not aware of any. Do we have any, Mr. White?
We have none. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right, item 6, which is pages 7 to 11, is the Hub Committee Forward Plan. So if I go through this page by page, if anybody sees anything that's not right or they're being signed up to work that's not really theirs, move forward. So page 8. Page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12, what there is of it. Is everybody happy to note that plan? Thank you. Right, item 7. A renewed commitment to climate change and biodiversity, page 13 to 18. Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you, Chair. A renewed commitment to climate change and biodiversity. This report is the initial stage of development of the new Council's priorities regarding the climate and biodiversity emergency. Our ambitions mark a renewed commitment to addressing the urgent issues we face: loss of species and habitat, increasing carbon emissions, poor air quality, pollution in rivers and waterways, and the need to ensure national government steps up to its climate and biodiversity responsibilities, and doing all in our power to ensure that we leave West Devon in the best possible position for our young people to enjoy. Right. You will note recommendations 3 and 4 are reintroductions to the Council. Firstly, the proposal that West Devon fully endorses Devon Carbon Plan. The decision made in November 22 was that this Council only notes the plan. We're the only Council in Devon not to endorse the Carbon Plan. I think we were too cautious with our decision making. We need to go much further in our commitments to tackling climate collapse. The language in the plan does not commit us to do anything we don't want to do. And if you look at the section marked Making the Plan a Reality, it says the Devon Climate Emergency Partners are encouraged to look at the actions and select those that they will help deliver. So that doesn't commit us to anything to assure people's anxieties about this. We know that the time for caution has passed. All around us, we see and hear the effects of human activity on the natural world. Unprecedented change is upon us. We need to do everything we can as individuals and as a council locally to prevent this. We can note what we've already achieved, as noted in our plan, but we need to go further and endorse the Devon Carbon Plan. So we're standing with our neighbours and taking coordinated action. And also the reintroduction of the proposal to support the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill currently before Parliament is following the decision by West Devon not to support this bill, but to support the Government's Environment Act instead, which has had less ambitious aims and objectives, and did not place any requirements on government to action the plans. The Climate and Emergency Bill will pledge to do our part to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, as per the Paris Agreement. It is standing now around 1.1 to 1.2 degrees above, so urgent action is needed. Pledge to reverse the loss of biodiversity in the UK by 2030. The current environment bill only states it will act to and not will do. The Climate Emergency Bill will pledge to build a consensus to wean the country off fossil fuels as soon as possible. The Climate Emergency Bill will introduce a National Citizens Forum, a panel of experts to advise the government on the best ways to tackle climate change. The Climate Emergency Bill will make governments accountable and instigate legally binding targets to carry out the pledges under the bill. These are all important reasons for us to show that we are committed to doing all we can to prevent climate breakdown. It will demonstrate that we mean to act decisively when we declared a climate emergency and biodiversity emergency in 2019. And I personally don't understand the reluctance to support these proposals. Any questions?
Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Jury and then Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you, Leader. I've got 3 questions, if I may. Firstly, the paper refers to a renewed commitment to presumably mitigate climate change and promote biodiversity. Does this imply that, in your view, there was insufficient commitment during the previous 4 years of the Council?
Thank you, Councillor Jury. I feel that we could have gone further, and I would like to see us go further now in our pursuit of trying to address the issues we face.
Thank you. I don't think we needed reminding that we did create a lead member for the natural environment, and that post has been occupied by Green Party councillors ever since then, so we might read something into that. Secondly, the Devon Carbon Plan, as it appears online, appears to be a working document. Can you clarify that that is the case? If so, how can we endorse it? How are we appraised of changes, alterations and amendments to the plan? And what is the governance process behind those changes?
Could I ask Adam to answer that question?
Hi, Councillor. So the main structure of the plan is fixed. The action plan isn't forecast to change. There's carbon budget periods in the Devon Carbon Plan where there's due to be review periods every... Okay. Sorry? Yeah. The Devon Carbon Plan is a fixed document, as far as I'm aware. The action plan's fixed. One of the main functions within the Devon Carbon Plan is to have these carbon budget periods. They run between 3 or 4 years, and at that point there will be chances to review the Devon Carbon Plan based on where the emissions trajectories are at the time. The only thing that we are looking at amending at the Devon Carbon Plan at the moment is the oversight and governance structure. The diagram in there, when it was published, was found to be quite confusing. So the Devon Climate Emergency Partnership are in the process of reviewing that at the moment, and those the mechanism for doing that is through the response group, which I sit on, and other directors and managers across Devon sit on as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the reason I ask is that the plan that is now online does appear to be different in some ways from the one we looked at previously. I'll make some comments about that when we come into debate. But we have had no communication as members as to changes that seem to have taken place, other than now looking it up online in response to this paper being circulated. So it does seem a bit confusing, and I'll come on to that in debate as to what I feel about it. That would just be my question.
Councillor Dewey, could I ask you to pinpoint where you think the changes have occurred? Because we don't feel that it's only the governance structure page that has altered.
Okay. In particular, the debate that we had previously highlighted one particular issue about being proactive in promoting a reduction in meat and dairy consumption. That specific item now seems to have been removed, and reference is made instead to the government's Eat Well plan, which was published in about 2011. Certainly from our perspective, and I'll come on to that in debate, it seems like a much friendlier document to farming in particular than it was the last time we looked at it.
Lamott.
Apologies, Leader, thank you. With regard to point 2 for the recommendations, is the Mayor looking to make this a permanent addition to the existing set of awards which already highlight the achievements of our young people and the environment? And should it be within this paper?
No, it's not. It's just for my term of office, Councillor Mott. It will end when I leave the post.
If I may return on that one and then ask a supplementary, can I ask then why it's been recommended to Council and why there is a need to include it within the paper when the launch has in fact already happened and we are effectively endorsing something that has already been launched and publicised and is about to have its first award?
I think it's because it's a good news story and we want to make people aware that it is in existence, those that haven't already seen it.
I would then urge the caution of not politicising a role which has historically been non-political.
I don't think it's anything to do with politics. I think it's to do with showing that this council cares about its young people. That's the aim and objectives of having the award, more than just having one a year.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. The Devon Carbon Plan report, considered by this committee in November 2022, it contained a recommendation that Council revises its climate change strategy and action plan to show how it will contribute to delivering the Devon Carbon Plan. Recognising the need to be aware of the financial and resource implications, members amended the recommendation to read as follows: that Council be recommended to revise its climate change strategy and action plan and assess the financial and resource implications required to show how it would contribute to delivering the Devon Carbon Plan. So the question is, has this work been undertaken? If it has, what were the outcomes, and has this been communicated to members? Thank you.
Yeah, the work's in process, but we haven't finalised that just yet. It'll probably be subject to coming back to members with those recommendations about how that strategy is going to evolve.
Mike, can I just add a further question there? Should we really be looking to change our stance on the Devon Carbon Plan until that work has been completed and we have, an understanding of the resource implications, particularly finance? And in any case, we will need to know that as we develop our new corporate plan. So I'm kind of questioning why we should be changing our stance on the plan until we fully understand what the implications are, how we're going to contribute, and how our climate change action plan is going to be aligned to the Devon Carbon Plan.
Councillor Edmonds, I think the plan is quite clear in saying that the partners are encouraged to look at the actions and select those they will help deliver. So anything that we feel is unaffordable, we won't be delivering and we won't be considering. So I don't really think your objection stands, actually. I think we should fully support and endorse this plan along with the rest of Devon and align West Devon and our plans with everybody else's, as in a Team Devon approach.
Please respond. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Daniel. I'm not sure it was meant as an objection. It was meant as a point of clarification, really, on what I feel, that after all was a council resolution that work be undertaken, and it seemed appropriate that work should be undertaken and the outcomes understood by all members before we change our stance on the plan. I'm not against the plan. I'm simply trying to make sure that our governance arrangements are thorough and that we've been seen to carry through the wishes of council members in November 22.
I think that the choice to endorse the plan is a question of language, and it shows our commitment to climate change and implementing anything that we can to address the climate emergency that we've already supported. And I think it will make no difference to our resource situation if we do endorse the plan, because we will still have a choice as each decision comes along to decide whether or not it's affordable and whether it's something the council wants to pursue. And at the moment, all what I'm asking for is this council to endorse the Devon Carbon Plan, and then we will make our decisions as we need to, not now. And I don't think it needs us to go through it first before we decide to endorse the plan. And I think, we need to be following.
Some of that, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Edmund.
Debate.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Jury, you're not going to take us down the footsteps of debate, are you?
No, Chair. I have my last question, if that's okay. The report proposes support for the CEE bill. I wonder whether anyone could explain what the adoption of the CEE bill will mean for people in West Devon, and how the proposals within it differ from current legislation and indeed from the Devon Carbon Plan.
I think support for the CEE bill will have no resource implications other than writing to the CEE Bill Alliance and also to our MPs asking them to support the bill. Again, it's a question of showing our commitment to where we want to head and what we want to do as a council, and that we want to see really strong leadership from Parliament on the environment, which the current Environment Bill does not deliver.
I beg to differ, Chair, but perhaps we'll cover that in debate.
Can I just make a request, please? Could all mobile phones be turned off so they're not ringing or bleeping or anything else? Thank you. If we could move forward for debate, are you going to push forward your recommendations?
Yes.
We'll note them 1 to 4. I'll second that. Yes. And then if we can go into debate, please. Who would like to lead for debate?
Thank you, Chair. Members, I really welcome the content of this paper as an acknowledgement of the programme that this council has delivered over the past 4 years and baked into its plan for the coming year and beyond. Whilst I do wonder about the need for a renewed commitment, my understanding was certainly that we are and have been already committed to that programme. I am looking forward to the forthcoming strategy papers, which I hope will demonstrate some new initiatives based on rational, realistic and science-based solutions which have the interests of our residents, particularly our rural and farming communities, at their heart. Do not underestimate in any way the commitment of the Conservative group that this council should fully play its role in supporting zero emission, climate change mitigation and biodiversity policies. The Conservative administration of this council adopted a climate emergency 4 years ago and signed the Devon Climate Emergency Declaration. We set up a natural environment portfolio, created a new post to facilitate that, and supported the appointment of a member of the Green Party as the lead member in each of the last 4 years. Reducing emissions has been a central part of our strategy since then. The plan for West Devon includes a series of costed actions, and we have been successful in securing very significant funding for green projects, which are rolling into the future plan. So let's look at the 2 proposals to be made to Council. The repeated request that we endorse the Devon Carbon Plan. This stems from a really interesting and positive debate This committee and subsequently full council had on this topic last year. At that time, and given some of the elements of the plan put before us then, the council, including I might add many of our West Devon Alliance colleagues still on this council, overwhelmingly agreed that West Devon should note the plan and take steps to implement those elements of the plan that were relevant and appropriate to West Devon. This position, contrary to the picture painted by some in support of their own agendas, fully recognised the importance of the plan, that the majority of the proposals were sensible and welcome, fully supported the overall aims and intentions behind the plan, and ensured that West Devon's local policy would continue to be shaped and implemented in support of the Devon-wide plan. In doing so, our primary goal, supported by a large majority on this council, was to ensure that the needs of rural communities within West Devon were met, and that our amazing local farmers producing amazing local produce should be championed and not demonised in any plan that this council puts forward. In this context, farmers, the custodians of our local landscape and the natural environment, as well as the providers of our food, are and should be recognised as a central part of the solution and not as part of the problem. Sadly, the plan at that time included a few elements that appeared to be urban-centric and not take into account the needs of a rural, low-income economy, and, in the words of the NFU at our own O&S committee, contained some elements which were anti-farming. There is an online link to the current version of the DCP, and I'm impressed by the plan in its current iteration. It is lengthy, but easy to read, contains many excellent goals, and is a well-produced, coherent plan. It is perhaps a shame that this link, in my view, had not been circulated as part of the agenda or discussed by the council at large in informal council or at O&S. I'm absolutely delighted that the references that we and the majority of the West Devon Alliance were concerned about last time around appear to have been amended or removed. The specific and direct proposals to actively encourage a reduction of meat and dairy consumption, for example, have now been replaced by references to the government's Eat Well guide and creating local markets, all of which are much more sensible and palatable, and which I, for one, would have been inclined to support were that on offer at the time. I think it's reasonable to believe that our objections were listened to and the plan seems to have evolved and developed taking our views into account. And I take that as a small victory and a complete vindication of this small district council's stance, alone it seems amongst our colleagues in Devon at that time. It certainly reiterates the point that we should not just sign up because everyone else has, but should subject these important issues to debate, constructive dialogue and informed decisions. That leads me to another question. How can we be asked to endorse something that can then shift and change without consultation and agreement? For example, what if the plan, at the suggestion of the Climate Change Assembly, was to introduce the requirement for on-street car parking charges to reduce dependency on motor vehicles? At this moment, members will know that West Devon has been fully involved in discussions to mitigate the implementation of such a scheme in Tavistock. And if we've endorsed a plan that says otherwise, where does that leave us room to develop future policies that are appropriate for our area, place and residents? I take some comfort from the reassurances that I have been given today. So, whilst I and our group fully support the aims and intentions of the Devon Carbon Plan, as we have always done, and the authority that the Council provided earlier in the year to revise a plan for West Devon to take account of that, I still find myself in a position where, without further research and answers to specific questions, I'd like to hold back from fully endorsing the plan at present. When the time comes, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion to continue to fully support the aims and intentions of the Devon Carbon Plan and to review the Council's carbon reduction strategy through a plan for West Devon as appropriate. Finally, the need to proffer a local council support for a national policy launched by the Green Party with the support of various eco-focused groups like Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil has again reared its head. I object to this, as did the Council sensibly and firmly the last time this was round, because, and mainly because, as a local council we should be concentrating firmly on our responsibilities and the delivery of our plans, and not extending time and resources on a national initiative which promises little and has no hope of being adopted into law during the currency of the present Parliament. Yes, we should be lobbying government and our MPs when we need to, and as we have done successfully over the past 4 years. The government's groundbreaking Environment Act 2021 and other initiatives within the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill have, as recorded in this paper, provided this council with significant opportunities to improve the environment, reduce emissions and tackle climate change. Let's just take a few of them as mentioned in the paper. Funding for retrofitting outlined in 3.4, an EV strategy at 3.7, planting trees at 3.10, wood regeneration at 3.11, the reinstatement of the railway to Oakhampton and funding to build a new travel hub on the A30 to the west of the town, renewed interest in re-establishing the railway to Tavistock, £1.8 million secured from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which the last administration committed to allocate to projects aimed at agri-tech, active travel and carbon reduction. In what way are these things an indication that we're not being supported or that the government is not taking its promise of zero carbon seriously? According to the latest figures, in March 2023, UK greenhouse gas emissions were 50% lower than they were in 1990. The UK is reducing its emissions faster than any other G7 country. I'm not here to say that's the right figure. One might well argue we should be doing more. But I ask you, what benefit is it going to bring to this council to express its support for a bill motivated by a specific agenda to embarrass the government and impose an unworkable citizens' assembly onto a system which is already working hard to achieve the zero carbon goal, whilst at the same time encouraging UK industry, science and technology to come up with technological solutions to the global crisis which continues to worsen despite our best efforts? We should concentrate our efforts on local delivery, support for regional policy, supporting government policy and bidding for funds that become available, whilst lobbying our representatives at county and national level to effect changes where it's needed. Furthermore, I am slightly puzzled. We've just been asked to endorse the Devon Carbon Plan, which maps out a route to zero carbon by 2050. The CE bill would require a much more rapid reduction of emissions if its targets are to be achieved. I'm not sure, therefore, that anyone can actually support both motions. If you believe that the CE bill is necessary and the only solution, then surely you cannot also endorse a plan that works at a slower pace over a longer period. If you endorse the Devon Carbon Plan, then supporting the CE bill would require that plan to be ripped up and replaced with a far more drastic set of goals. So on this point, I'd also be suggesting an amendment to the wording of that motion to continue to support regional and national policy to reduce emissions and tackle climate change by lobbying our MPs on specific issues and embedding appropriate costed actions into a plan for West Devon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jury. Anyone else? Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you, Chair. In order not to repeat many of the points that Councillor Jory has raised, I will refrain from adding to that part of the debate. However, I will struggle to support the recommendation number 2 as it stands because 4.9 within the paper states very clearly that the council will therefore introduce a Mayor's Young Person Environment Award, which kind of goes against the answer that Councillor Daniel gave me just now, which was that it was intended that it is just a specific award for her year. Therefore, I will be unable to support that part of the recommendation, and I might suggest, please, that we take each item in isolation rather than doing en bloc so that we can fully go through each recommendation on its own, please.
Does anyone else have any comments they would like to make? Councillor Leach, please.
If I could make this and this work, I'll try my best. I can't actually follow what's just been said because it covers just about everything that I'm concerned about. What I was concerned about first time round, because I was one of those independents who voted to keep it as noted rather than take the whole plan in its place. And that is that I still believe nationally and worldwide we need far more research and science-based facts as to how efficient electric cars and everything else is, and the full the full issues that will come from going down that road. So from a carbon point of view, how much does it actually create to create batteries, to create cars, and then scrap perfectly good engines where we could be using hydrogen in the report, in the plan. It seems to be mainly electric. Doesn't talk much about hydro, wind and hydrogen. I couldn't see anywhere. So it's just, dare I say, a narrow band that people are looking at government as well. So I personally think that we should be getting the science worldwide up front first. And if the plan has changed, that needs to come back to full council so we can see the changes fully and then debate it. But if it stays as it is, I'll still stay as I have been and just note the plan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I certainly couldn't add to anything that Councillor Jory has said. It's a very comprehensive debate, so I won't attempt to, but maybe I'll just comment on a couple of sections. I think there's perhaps over-reliance on the justification that, you know, we're the only council that didn't endorse it and that we must fall in line. I don't really get that argument. We made a decision. We produced good reasons as to why that decision was reached. And indeed, some of those reasons have now been carried into the Devon Carbon Plan, particularly around agriculture, which I'm very pleased to see. Very encouraging. I think for me, it's perhaps around the presentation of the reintroduction of these motions. In the first paper, we had links to the carbon plan. We haven't this time. I'm thinking of new members we welcome to this committee, and indeed, probably 50% of the council has changed. I would like to think that they've had the opportunity to link to the plan. As we did in the first report, there was a lot of rationale contained in the actual body of the report in November. But I think that's lacking, and we just seem to be, a recommendation, we must do this because everyone else is doing it. I'm not convinced by that argument, so I'd much prefer to see some evidence making the case as to why we should change our stance. And I would also want to see the financial and resource outcomes before I change my stance on the plan. So I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of the plan. But I really think on this occasion, and I tend to agree with Councillor Joy, that maybe we need to seek an amendment to make sure that, we have indeed followed the correct governance route and that we're able to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak, please? Any of the members behind? Councillor Viney.
Yes, thank you. Having listened to the debate, I would just like to say that there is a huge opportunity as a rural borough to take responsibility. And to echo Councillor Jury's words, our amazing local farmers, we have an incredible opportunity where we live to address climate change. And I would like to say that land is where our responsibility to the world is enacted. And I would like to support us in signing this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Viney. Anybody else? Councillor Jury, may I just ask if Sorry, I didn't know whether you wanted to speak. I'm going to ask if you would like to re-say what some of your proposed change recommendations are, and then if we get a seconder, and then if we move through process that way.
Certainly, Chair, thank you. I echo what Councillor Viney has said. There is a massive opportunity here. It'd be a shame if we didn't follow that up by continually debating about issues that are outside of our control. We need to focus on what is inside our control, and I think we're doing that in part through our current programme. So if I may, my amendment that I'd like to propose to the first motion is to continue to fully support the aims and intentions of the Devon Carbon Plan and to review the Council's carbon reduction strategy through a plan for West Devon as appropriate.
Excuse me, you've lost me. Right.
I've got the wording, Leader. I'll put it on the screen.
Right, okay, because I was on reading number 1 and I think you were a bit further down. Right, so number 1 is the update regarding the Council's progress. You're quite happy with that one, Councillor Jury?
I'm happy with that, Chair, for the reasons that I stated.
Yep, yep. Councillor Mott would like to speak on number 2 again.
Only in that Councillor Daniel's explanation of point 2 is in conflict with 4.9 within the paper.
Yes, that one can be easily amended to show that it is for the current civic year. And maybe the word launch removed. Sorry, Councillor Jury.
Fine, Chair. If you want me to deal with the second proposed amendment as well, that was to continue to support regional and national policy to reduce emissions and tackle climate change by lobbying our MPs on specific issues and embedding appropriate costed actions into a plan for West Devon.
Item number 2, because we seem to be agreed on item number 1. Item number 2, is there any more comments to raise on that? No? Okay, right. Item number 3, Councillor Jury. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Mott. And for number 4, do we have a seconder? Councillor Edmonds. Right, thank you very much. We will now go through these one by one. So, is there any further debate needed on number 1? We're all happy with that one? Right, can I see a show of hands, please?
Thank you, Leader. That's unanimous for part 1. Thank you.
Thank you. For number 2, the establishment of the Mayor's Young Persons Environment Award for the 2023-24 municipal year. Show of hands, please.
That's unanimous for the revised wording. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right. Number 3, to continue to fully support the aims and intentions of the Devon Carbon Plan and to review the Council's carbon reduction strategy through a plan for West Devon as appropriate. Is there any debate, anything else on that one? Councillor Daniel.
I just want to say that I'm very disappointed that we cannot endorse Devon's carbon plan as we are part of Devon. I don't think the arguments given against not supporting it and going our own way are sufficient for us to be standing alone in this area. And I think working together is far better than working separately. And as all said and done, carbon and the climate change is coming our way, whatever we feel. And I think it's a question of language that we endorse it because we feel that that's the best way to go. And so I'm very sorry that they felt the need to change it and water it down again.
Sorry, Councillor Renders.
Despite the eloquent arguments, and they were very eloquent, and I was most impressed, especially by Councillor Jury's thing that I was one of the ones that voted to adopt it in its entirety. And I'm with Councillor Daniel on this one. I think we need to be seen to be doing more. As good as it was, it hasn't changed my vote or my view on that one, I'm afraid. But just thought I'd say that before we got to the end, so that I wasn't say it quietly.
I would beg to differ on that.
Councillor Mott, Councillor Jury, please.
Oh, you should have looked at me, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think I have to say, Councillor, I don't think you've listened here to the debate. We're not standing alone. We're firmly standing side by side with our colleagues in the rest of Devon. In point of fact, I could still be persuaded to vote in order to endorse the plan. I just would like to get a couple of questions answered. I have to say that I think our problems with this stem back to the first time this was introduced, when it was presented as a paper, as a fait accompli. It's very complex, it's very involved, and as I understand it, and I'm understanding it more as we talk about it, it's the top level aims and objectives of the plan that we're being asked to endorse. I could be easily persuaded to endorse that plan, but I think we missed a trick. I think we should have had more work on this in an informal council or through ONS before it came to Hub the first time around, so that we fully understood it and weren't left to our own devices to read the papers and make what we could out of it. I could still be persuaded, but I would like to have that further commitment as to what we're actually signing up for. In terms of working together and standing beside our colleagues, I absolutely buy into that and support that. And we're doing that. We're doing that in practice through the agri-tech work that we're engaged in as a council across Devon with other authorities. So to try and represent it in that way, I think is not correct and is not representing the picture as it is, or even our opinion of what this debate is all about.
Thank you, Councillor Jury. Councillor Mott, and then Councillor Viney.
Thank you, Chair. I only wanted to make the point that my recollection of full council was that Councillor Renders actually supported the motion of noting the commitment that we had rather than endorsing.
Councillor Viney.
I would like to sign up to the Devon Climate Action, whatever it is we're talking about, the paper we're talking about, because the problems we are addressing must be solved at landscape scale. In trying to, I acknowledge that the issues are complex, but complexity builds resilience, and both are our friends. So if you want to build resilient communities, you have to embrace the complexity of this. And farmers will be the heroes in this, but the lack of investment in trying to support them through this transition is creating a huge lag in the system. So to create lag within this council is wrong. We need to be leading and really being at the forefront of this support for this rural community. So I really would hope that we acknowledge an emergency and a crisis and the opportunity that we can afford our rural communities.
Right, I'm going to chip in there. I take on board, and I have to say, I fully put my hand up. I noted it last time. I have a daughter and a son-in-law who both work in farming. And, you know, that is their livelihood and everything else going forward. So, you know, I fully support that side of it, and I could understand where Councillor Mott came from last time. I fully got that because, you know, she's talking about my daughter's life. I think I'm going to suggest, and Councillor Daniel, you may not be very happy with me in a moment, but we will see. Councillor Jury has already said that with more work being done on this, he could be persuaded to come forward to agreeing with it. I've got other heads in front of me that are nodding on this issue. The next full council meeting where this could have come forward to is actually only 2 weeks away. That is not time for the officers to hold an informal meeting with everyone so we get to see everybody's views and go forward with it then, so we clearly know what you would like, Councillor Daniel. You hear everybody's views and we go forward. Mr. Williams and Mr. Powell will work with you from what we discuss at that meeting, and I think you will be able to bring more members with you. I'm sorry if it's going to be a real-time thing. You can either sit here now and say, I don't want that, I want to drive it through. It may not happen this afternoon. I think you need to just keep your powder dry for a little bit longer and to work with the council as a whole and with the officers, and we hold an informal meeting. Hang on.
Chairman, so you're proposing to defer the formal consideration to the 21st November with an informal member briefing?
Yes. Yeah. So
Yes,
on
I'd be
page,
happy with that.
you'd be happy with
Yes,
that?
I would. I
Right.
think it's clear that we need a bit more debate.
Going on. Councillor Jury, you with me or?
Yeah, I'm completely with you, Chair. And in the spirit of cooperation and trying to move things forward at pace, and with the involvement, the full involvement of members across the council, if that were the commitment, I'd be happy to withdraw my proposed amendment and probably at this point abstain on the vote so that it would still be on the card for the next council, if that would help.
We probably haven't got enough time to be able to hold that informal meeting and for the officers to be able to go away from there with what is really the importance of what we want from this. Because as you have already said, that some of the carbon plan has changed because, because of maybe what we said. And actually, sometimes being outside forces people to look at why you're outside. And maybe that is what's happened. And that's all to the good of West Devon. Councillor Daniel has said that she's willing, I'm not going to say happy because she might not be happy, that she is willing to defer. I can see lots of nodding heads round here. So if we need to withdraw the whole thing.
Can I make a suggestion, Chair? I think in view of the debate, my understanding of what is being proposed, I think the lead member is supportive, is that this report is withdrawn and is slated to come back on the 21st of November. So we defer consideration of the report. We bring it back on the 21st of November to Hub Committee, and in the intervening period, we deal with the questions and issues in particular through an all-member briefing. Does that work?
Can I just add to that sort of clarity? We have voted on parts 1 and 2, so they have been resolved. So we're looking at parts 3 and 4 on this one. So I've put a formal wording on the screen at 3. If you're happy for me to include and the CEE bill, that may sweep up both parts 3 and parts 4 as an alternative recommendation. So it reads, reconsider the matters of the Devon Carbon Plan and the CEE bill at the next hub. Within the formal member
If I
briefing
may,
being
in the
held.
interests of clarity, there is no CEE bill. It has been amended to the CE bill.
E. Therefore, Leader, I have put a revised form of wording up, which hopefully encompasses the wishes and parts 3 and 4 of the original amendment and recommendations.
I was going to say something.
So that is seven in favour. Thank you, Leader.
Can I say something, Chair, with your permission? Well, thank you for that excellent way forward. I'm really pleased with that outcome. And can I also put on record that as a very lucky grandparent, I have 4 grandchildren, so I'm very concerned about climate change, its impact. You only got to watch the news for a few minutes to understand that. So I do want to be persuaded to sign up to the Devon carbon plan, absolutely. But I'm very keen that we approach this in the right way and that we have a good understanding of the plan, its governance, what happens when there are changes, are we involved in those changes? Let's get it right, and then we can, and then I can fully get behind it. Once I understand it, I'm confident that there is a good governance process behind this.
Thank you very much for that. And as I have my first grandchild due in November, 2 farmers, I wholeheartedly endorse. You. Farming gang are having children. Move to page 19, members of the agenda, and this is the item supporting our care leavers for council tax. This is a subject that is very close to mine and to our Chief Executive's heart. And he has been leading on this, and I don't know whether he'd started the work with Councillor Jury before me, but I have totally got on board, totally supported, and I'm very good at doing imploring, beseeching speeches for him, which I did use those words last time. I hope that the report is clear enough. Does anybody need anything else, or are you happy to accept? Councillor Mott.
Apologies, Chair. Let me get... I've just got one point of clarity, please. In 1.6 and in 2.4, it states that Devon County Council has agreed to fund the discounts for those living outside of Devon. Does that mean then that somebody from Cornwall, for example, moving to Tavistock would be funded by Cornwall? Or would that tab be picked up by Devon?
So I'm going to try and answer the question. Thank you, Chair. So it's fair to say some of the detail still needs to be worked through, and it might be that your specific question, Councillor Mott, is one of the things that might still be needed to work through. But the general principle is that of the care leavers who are still resident within the Devon area, the principle is that each individual district should meet the costs after discount for the council tax that they are liable for. In return, the proposition is that all other care leavers who are Devon young people who are living outside of Devon, so those who are placed outside Devon, would also benefit similarly by the county meeting their costs if they're not already discounted by the area in which they live. So the overall intention here is one of creating a level playing field so that all care leavers are treated equally across the county area, irrespective of their geographical location. I hope that helps. It may not have answered the very specific question you asked, but the intention's there.
Yeah, please. It wasn't a criticism of the paper or the intention behind the paper at all. It was just seeking that clarity in there. Thank you.
Any other questions, anybody? No? Right, so I'm happy to put the recommendation through that the Hub Committee recommends to Council the adoption of a council tax discount scheme for carers with effect from the 1st of October 2023. Care leavers, what did I say? No, that's in there, isn't it? For care leavers with effect from 1st of October 2023. May I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Councillor Enders. May we have a vote, please? Any debate? Sorry. Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Leader. Absolutely correct that the lead for housing should second that, so well done. Yes, you're right. We have had some discussions about this in the past, and I know full well how much this means. I think it's a really good proposal, and it will have my full support.
Thank you. Just before we go to a vote, I'd just like to add that I think we have been surprised, I think that's a good word, isn't it, how readily some of the other authorities around us, the districts around us, have embraced this. Exeter, that I was hugely worried about, because for them it would be a very large cost. They've supported it and are putting it through. So hopefully, you know, by the time we next speak, we find out that actually every district in Devon has supported it.
So I think it's fair to say that all districts support the principle. Absolutely, there is some difference of opinion about the technical route for getting from A to B. I'm absolutely certain that we've had the best advice from Jenny, and that's what's reflected in this report. There'll be some further discussions about future costs, but I'm confident we are in the right place, Leader. Thank you.
All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right, if we move to item 9 now. Welcome, Ali. I think, oh, Jack was on there, but she's gone. Right, the planning improvement update. So, Mr. Wagstaff and Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you, members. I won't insult your intelligence by implying that you haven't read through the paper beforehand. I feel it's very self-explanatory. It's something really that we are working on that's already been fully agreed by this council. I will, however, highlight 5.9 where the figures given are incorrect, and my officer is feeling suitably contrite, I'm sure, at having the wrong figures within the report.
Certainly, I'm a councillor, and I'd like to apologise that we've got those wrong figures in there for all members.
Thank you. However, they are, Mr. White, do you have the correct figures to be able to show those, or would you like those?
Give me 1 sec, Chair.
Therefore, I'm happy to take questions, Chair. While we're waiting for that, in order to spare Mr. Wagstaff's blushes, I did also fail to note in my read through as well.
Just for clarification, members, just why Mr. White's just bringing those figures up there, you can just see on the slide that's been brought forward here, just the correction of figures, and say once again apologies that the wrong ones were in that report. You can just see highlighted on the slide here in yellow that the correct figures are being shown for you. I think the key point just to make is that in terms of the figures, we do remain above the national targets in terms of the number of decisions being made. Notwithstanding that, and as set out in the report, it is important that we continue to work positively to speed up the determination of planning applications, and also that we reduce the number of extensions of time that are required, particularly in relation to minor or non-major applications, to ensure we're getting speedy decisions made out to help development taken forward within West Devon.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions on this report? No? Oh, Councillor Edmonds, thank you.
I have more than one question, so you may not. Section 4, outcomes. One of the identified improvement areas is communication. And I know this has been an issue with my conversations with applicants, agents, and indeed some members. So what actions are being taken to achieve good outcomes in this area, please?
More than happy to answer your question, Councillor Edmonds. Obviously, as we've got set out in the report, there's been a lot of work done to make sure we've got the correct workload allocated to officers, and we've got suitable resources in there to be able to, better respond to the comments which are being made by agents, members and members of the community as well there. We're not quite where we want to be yet, but we are driving through on behalf of the planning management team the planning officers to make sure they are diligently and quickly responding to comments and questions and things which are being raised in there. That has been passed out to all members within the department. I am actually, just for your information, tomorrow I've got a staff meeting with all the planning officers again, just to reinforce the point about how important it is, given that we've got the extra capacity in there now, that we are dealing with these matters quickly, because it's a really important part of how we show the quality of the decisions that were being made. So, I can only apologise that we're not quite where we want to be yet, but please rest assured that, mine and the management team and SLT's position is that we need to be improving these measures, and we're driving that position home with officers.
Thank you for that response. Thank you. My next question is around extension of time, number of applications. I think the report says that the number of applications is increasing. But I know from looking at budget monitoring reports, etc., that planning income is reducing. So is the answer a reduction perhaps in the larger planning fees coming off the back of majors, or is it something else?
Just to come back in relation to that question, there has been that increase in the number of planning applications, which has been seen as a national trend. The reason behind that is we're seeing a more significant number of smaller and minor planning applications which are being received, rather than, as you said, the number of larger major applications. So it's the major planning applications which have obviously the higher fee amount, which we're not receiving as many in at the moment, but we're seeing that increase in the number of the smaller ones there. But actually the planning application fee which we receive, is nowhere near as significant in that, and that's what's creating that disparity in the position going forward.
Thank you for that. There's been talking of fees that at 5.27 it talks about a technical and operational review of the charges and fees for the planning service has been undertaken. I presume that would include for the pre-application service. So I'm just wondering, when will members see a scale of fees, unless I've missed it, and when do we intend to implement the new scale of fees?
So we've undertaken a full review of the planning application fees and the associated fees associated with planning, which would include the pre-applications. You're quite right that that's the right element of that. We're just going through the process now in discussions with Lisa, as the Director of Finance, who's got the delegated authority to be able to implement those changes in fees. So we're just going through the process of getting that agreed. We would then be looking to bring those new fees in October. We just need to go through the technical process of just making sure that when we release these new fees that they're correctly shared out with agents, but that they're also made available in relation to the changes to our online systems to make sure there's not a disparity there. So we're going to be working with that. We'll then be in a position to be able to share those with members, although we could do that earlier in advance once we've got the delegation to be able to implement those figures going forward.
I'd just like to add to that point that Mr Wagstaff hasn't referred to, is that the planning fees are being looked at and being lobbied at a government level, because I don't think there's many planning departments in the country that are actually the fees marry up with the costs of delivering a planning application. And I've written down here on my notes, many departments nationally make a loss. Why should, in this case, West Devon council taxpayers subsidise people for a planning application? You know, it's wrong. And, you know, we should be able to get the fees in for the work that's done. And at the moment, that bit is not recognised by government, and it is being looked into.
Just for clarification, just so members are aware, obviously there was the consultation, as you're correctly referring to, Councillor Ewings, and we have had confirmation that the increase in the planning application fees, so they're not the ones we set locally, are being updated. We're going to see a 35% increase in the fees for major applications. For the vast majority of others, it will be a 25% increase. We're expecting those to potentially come in April of next year. We had hoped they might come in partway through this year, but unfortunately that's not looking likely to be the case. But it is one of the many factors that we're thinking, and as you correctly say, we are looking at the fees that the wider service is delivering to make sure that the council taxpayer and the residents of West Devon aren't taking on board those extra costs where we can, that we ought to be providing a good quality of service, but that we're getting the correct fees in from applicants to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Jury.
Just very quickly, Leader, you're absolutely right on that point about fees, and good to hear what Mr Wagstaff is saying. That item is very firmly on the Local Government Association's agenda to discuss with DLUC and is in process of being talked about.
Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about recruitment and what progress has been made in retention and recruitment of planning staff. I can see that caseloads seem to be much reduced, so that would ease the situation, I would imagine. But is that an evidence of more staff or other changes that you've made?
So there have been a wide range of changes that we've started to introduce, which have been informed by the wider planning improvement plan and the recommendations we had from the planning advisory service. Recruitment remains an ongoing issue in the planning profession, and we've struggled to recruit. As part of that, we have had some really good news stories. You know, we've been able to, since, the expansion of the management team and the extra resources which have been provided to the planning service, we have been able to bring in a principal planning officer and a number of other planning officers. As well as that, we've also had some internal recruitment with officers taking up more senior positions. We do still have a number of vacancies which we're looking into about quite how we do that. But what we want to make sure in this point going forward, as you can see, those planning applications per officer number has dropped, is that we're getting the right people in at the right level to be able to drive forward the quality with that we're hoping to be able and want to be able to deliver. It is still an issue, and we do still see a rolling stream of people coming into the authority and potentially people leaving as other jobs come up elsewhere. But that's a nationally based issue which is going on. But we are starting to see a greater stability in our workforce, and certainly from my experience, having been here for 10 months now, we've got a really good calibre of officers which are getting in and progressing, and that's starting to help us drive through those improvements.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? No. Councillor Mott, please.
Thank you, Chair. In that case, I would like to move the recommendations as detailed on page 29 of our agenda and on the screen before us. Thank you.
I'm happy to second. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, any debate, anybody? Nearly got my wrist slapped by Councillor Watt. Any debate, anybody? No. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, the three. Thank you, Leader.
If we can now move to page 37, which is the progress update on housing projects. Welcome, Mrs. Blake.
This report sets out an update on a number of housing projects around the borough. Firstly, there is the good news that West Devon has completed on the 5 properties it received funding under LAF1, which is the Local Authority Housing Fund. We're one of the first in the country to achieve this, so that's a massive tick and a big plus. These properties will be available very soon to support our Ukrainian placement breakdowns, Afghan families in bridging hotels and our wider temporary accommodation needs. Due to our success in LAF1, we are recommending to the executive we would participate in LAF2, which is a slightly amended scheme with 2 properties for temporary accommodation and one to support Afghan families in the first instance, and then again our own wider housing needs. It is recommended we purchase 3 properties to use funding of up to 410,000 from Section 106 Affordable Housing Contributions. It is also recommended that we spend 80,000 from the Affordable Housing Earmark Reserve to modernise 3 Spring Hill Tavistock up to a decent home standard to use an additional temporary accommodation. These 3 actions will give us 9 properties to use as much needed homeless accommodation and alleviate some of our rising temporary accommodation costs. The last recommendation on here is regarding an exempt report on Spring Hill, and then we might have to go into part 2 on that one. Now, I know we did have an all-member briefing, so I think we covered most of it, so I'll only ask that we go into part 2 if we need to, because I think we covered and did it to death at the previous meeting. But basically what we're saying really is that the or other options are to be explored, and you're going to be aware that obviously build costs have increased so significantly due to external factors beyond our controls that it is no longer fiscally responsible to pursue the project on its current form. The flats would cost about £500,000 each, and it's not viable at the moment, so we would like to move that onto perhaps a future consideration for that particular project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Councillor Jury, then Councillor Edmonds, please.
Thank you. A couple of questions, if I may. And perhaps there's an answer here that you might be able to provide if Councillor Edmonds doesn't know it. I'm under the understanding that a large proportion of the money that was made available centrally under the LAF funding has remained undrawn. Is that correct? Nationally?
Yes, that is correct. There's been a number of local authorities that haven't been able to take part. In a lot of cases, that's due to the really quite small window. They wanted us to be to have those offers by November and have completed the programme by next April, end of March.
Thank you. Well, in that case, congratulations to everybody who's managed to get this and get this done, because I think it's a great initiative. My second question, if I may, Chair, is that given the success so far of acquiring those properties as a model for what might happen in the future, and money that perhaps might be available if we don't go down the development of Spring Hill, is that something that we might look to use, i.e. purchase of this type of property off plan or however it was bought, for future provision of our own housing stock?
Yes, I think that whenever there are opportunities such as this that were given to us by the government through Local Authority Housing Fund, that we should explore that opportunity and use whatever funding we have available to match fund.
Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It'd be nice if the money that's not been drawn down nationally could be reallocated to West Devon.
I was going to say that.
I really welcome these schemes, and I echo Councillor Jory's remark about, you know, how well this council has dealt with that and promptly and been able to take full advantage. So, very well done. Really, just for clarification, the properties that are earmarked for our Ukrainian guests and Afghan families, if there is insufficient demand from those two cohorts, at what point would those properties become available for our residents who sadly may be homeless or potentially homeless?
When we when we were looking and doing our due diligence about the scheme in the first place, one of the things that we asked the DLUC advisors was whether those properties were expected to be empty for a certain amount of time, and we were told that there was no expectation that those properties would be held empty. We look at our Homes for Ukraine, we've had very few placement breakdowns in West Devon. We also then looked to the bridging hotels, and actually of the 2 hotels in Devon that closed at the end of August, we didn't have families that wished to come to West Devon. Therefore, we've made those offers to the Home Office. If there is nobody forthcoming, we will look to use those for our wider housing objectives.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, please? No? Councillor Renders?
Sorry, thank you. Note the acquisition of 5 homes through the Local Authority Housing Fund. Agree to participate in the Local Authority Housing Fund 2 and purchase at least an additional 2 properties. Approve expenditure to purchase properties through LAF 2 of up to 410,000 from Section 106 Affordable Housing Contributions. 4, to approve expenditure of up to 80,000 from the Affordable Housing Revenue Earmark Reserve to modernise 3 Spring Hill to a suitable standard to be used as additional temporary accommodation, and to note the details contained in the exempt report, Appendix B, and put on hold further progression of the Spring Hill redevelopment project whilst other options are explored. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second that. Councillor Renders. Is there any debate from anybody, please? Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Leader. Endeavour to do this without going into part 2, but clearly having done our due diligence and having done that properly on the proposed Spring Hill project, it's really disappointing that we're not able at this point to go ahead. I just want to say I hope that we can quickly move to looking into alternative recommendations so that those can come back and be considered as soon as possible.
I'd just like to ask, sort of hinting at where Councillor Jury and Edmonds were, is of this money that's not been spent, there'll be this huge thing that the money wasn't needed. So are we able to go back to them and say, we will spend it for you, or have we had our allocation?
I can ask that question.
All those in favour of the recommendation, please.
That's unanimous for all 5 recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Right, if we now move to page 55, please, and the proposed changes to the council tax reduction scheme. Is that going to be you, Jenny? Yes, I'm aware it's you, Councillor Leach. I was just looking for... It is Jenny.
Yes.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yes.
No, I knew he was here. I just couldn't see Mrs Molyneux anywhere. Right, Councillor Leach, please.
Thank you. Each year, the council has to update and agree a council tax reduction scheme to support residents who qualify for assistance in paying the council tax. The current scheme was changed for 2023-24 as part of our response to the cost of living crisis. We made the income bands more generous in response to the inflationary pressures on household budgets. The current scheme is a banded scheme which assesses the maximum level of council tax reduction based on the net income of the claimant and their partner, if applicable. In order to improve some aspects of the current scheme and continue to support residents when they need it most, we are proposing two specific changes. The first proposed change is to remove the minimum income floor. This assumes a certain amount of self-employed income, even if the resident didn't actually earn this amount. By making this change, we will be able to give self-employed residents more support when trying to grow their own businesses. The second proposed change is to disregard 100% of the limited capacity for work element of universal credit. The report explains this well, but I thought just to elaborate slightly. Due to the changes in the universal credit system, more people with disabilities will actually be better off, which is good news. But the changes in that system, which will actually mean that because they're better off, when it actually comes to us, it does change how much they would actually have to pay in council tax. The existing system would qualify for 80% reduction. So what we are proposing is that we disregard the extra universal credit payment and keep them at 80%. As if not, and it's like so many other benefit changes that the people involved would have to have money given to them in one hand and taken away the other. Agreeing this proposed change will provide additional support to those residents who have a disability or health condition which affects how much they can actually work. The two changes will help around 455 individuals. There is a cost of this, but for us it will be limited to 11% of the total, and the whole sum can be paid for from the council tax collection fund that is already in surplus. In order to make these changes to the scheme, the law requires us to consult with major precepting authorities and other persons we consider likely to have an interest in the operation of the scheme. The final tax reduction scheme must be adopted by the Council by 11th of March 2024, and any changes will be implemented from the 1st of April. So I'm sure that Mrs. Hoskins will be able to fill in any gaps should you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions, please? No. There we go. That was nice and easy. Right. We're happy to take all recommendations on block. Councillor Leach.
Yes, so if we're ready to move.
Yeah, we seem to be.
I'd like to move the recommendations that can be found on page 55 on block.
I'm happy to second those. Any debate, anybody, please? No. Oh, Councillor Daniel.
I just want to say I'm really happy that we've got a scheme that helps people a bit more than perhaps we have in the past, and hopefully it'll be successful.
Happy to take a vote, everyone? All those in favour?
Thank you, Leader. That's unanimous for both recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, now moving on to page 63, Performance and Resources. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Leader. As members are aware, regular revenue and capital budget monitoring reports are brought to the Hub Committee during the year, and a final outturn position is presented to the Audit Committee as part of the Statement of Accounts report. For completeness, a final outturn report is now presented to the Hub Committee. The report sets out the draft revenue and capital outturn position and a schedule of the Council's reserves at the year end, the 31st of March 2023. There was an underspend of £79,000 on the outturn position for the year, which has been added to unearmarked reserves. The Council is within 27% of councils nationally who have had their previous year's accounts, 2021-22, signed off by the external auditor. The accounts are essential to show how public funds are used to deliver council services. However, Grant Thornton is unable to complete the audit of the 2022-23 accounts by the deadline of the 30th of September due to a lack of staffing capacity. The audit is expected to be carried out during the winter months and completed by the end of January or early February. This is a national issue and the government is looking at ways to address it, which includes doing less audit work on areas such as fixed assets and pensions. In the financial year ended the 31st of March, the Council incurred additional cost and a shortfall in income of £1.16 million, or 15% of the Council's net budget, due mainly to the current economic climate with high inflation and the cost of living crisis. The extra costs included utilities, IT, insurance, the local government pay award, and a shortfall in planning income. £1.24 million of additional income and reductions in costs were achieved in 2022-23, equating to 16% of the Council's net budget. This was generated from various services, including the extra investment income, salary savings, and a reduction in homelessness prevention cost. The Council overachieved its savings and additional income target for the financial year with an outturn position of £423,000 against a target of £271,000, due mainly to an increase in recycling income. Details can be found in Appendix C to this report. It's important that we carefully manage the financial resilience of the Council. The key to the authority's financial resilience is our reserves, which I'm pleased to report are at a prudent level, with the general fund reserves made up of unearmarked and earmarked reserves standing at £10.47 million as at the 31st of March 23. Most of the Council's income is derived from our proportion of the council tax and business rates collected across the borough. So I must thank Mrs Hotchkiss, probably not in the room, who's our head of revenues and benefits, and her team for achieving an uplift in both our council tax and business rates collection rates during the financial year. You will have noted in the report the collection rates achieved against target and the positive impact this has had on the Council's income from this source. And I must also thank Mrs Buckle and Mrs Henstock and indeed all the finance team. Another challenging year, but again, prudent and steadfast management of our finances by the finance team has put the Council in a sound position. The report recommendation on page 63 of your agenda papers is that the Hub Committee resolves to note the draft revenue and capital outturn figures for the 22-23 financial year, including the overall revenue outturn position of an underspend of £79,000. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. I've got a question from Councillor Mott, and then we'll see what hands go up.
Thank you, Chair. While it's nice to see that we were amongst the 27% of councils that managed to get our accounts for 21-22 signed off, it is really disappointing to note that we will not achieve the same for this year. Considering the amount of money that we pay the auditors to compile our accounts and the extra workload that this will put onto our officers as they are trying to finalise those accounts while drawing up the budget with the various constraints that that's proposed under, and because we don't fully understand the finances that we will have going forward in some cases. Can I add to the recommendation, please, and my apologies, Councillor, for not raising this with you earlier. I no doubt you will remonstrate with me later. That we write to the auditors and anyone else that we need to, expressing our disappointment in that they are unable to conform to their contract with us and get our accounts back to us in a timely manner. I'm sure we are not the only council or the only public body that is struggling with this. I know the National Park Authority have also raised this as an issue, and I feel that we should be shouting loud and clear that this is not an acceptable way for a body to behave, bearing in mind the sums of money that we pay them.
Thank you, Councillor Mott. I was going to bring Mrs. Buckle in. Would you like to?
Can I?
This is an add-on, because obviously we sit on the National Park, and I was just thinking if we could maybe club together and do a joint one, because if you get enough voices saying the same thing, I think what happens is we'll complain as West Devon, and they say, well, sorry, and it's the same problem. But if everybody got together and said, do you know what, we're not going to be paying what you're asking, because everybody's getting appalling service, and I just feel that I find a way to maybe shock them, because it is awkward, and we are in the public eye, are we not? So it was just a suggestion on the back of the brilliant one there from Councillor Mott.
Thank you. Mrs. Buckle, please.
Thank you, Leader. I do have a bit of an update for members on this, because myself and Mrs. Henstock met with the audit partner at Grant Thornton on Monday, and I'm really pleased to report that we have been successful in getting the audit moved forward. It was going to be January 2024. It is now going to be moved forward to November, which we are really pleased about, because we very successfully made the case, I think, to Grant Thornton that we have one finance team covering two councils. We would be trying to do two budgets and two sets of audits, all during a very, very busy time in January. And we felt that their timetable wasn't taking into account the fact that we have one team delivering the finance function for two councils. That has been taken into account. We have an audit and governance committee meeting coming up in early October. The audit partner from Grant Thornton is due to give his update on the external audit plan, and he will present to the committee his plan, which will be that the audit will start in November, and they hope to conclude it by January. Yes, we very much have made the case that that isn't satisfactory, because we will not meet the national deadline for having our accounts signed off, which is the 30th of September. It has had a significant impact on Mrs. Henstock's team in finance, and that is because normally the audit will take place over the summer months when we haven't got things like budget preparation, and obviously while some of the transactional testing has been done, we haven't had the full audit. So that is going to put additional pressure on the team during November and December, but it is a much better position
than having the audit start in January. In terms of what can we do about it, there is a national consultation on the audit scale fees that we can respond to by the end of October. I have been notified this morning that our fees are going to go up. So for the current year, they are 52,000. Nationally, those audit fees are going up 150%. That is across the board nationally. And this time next year, we will be paying 132,000. We knew that was coming, so in last year's budget setting process, we have increased our audit budget by 60,000. As I say, that is a decision that has been made by public sector auditor appointments nationally, and there is probably very little we can do about that, if I'm honest. But yes, we can certainly make those points when the partner from Grant Thornton comes to present at the Audit Committee in October. And I think previous meetings of the Audit Committee, members have made those points robustly to Grant Thornton. Thank you.
Apart from we are, I'll tell you, there's quite a few of us who missed a few tricks. Those of us good at sums. That is just almost immoral. And really, really not good, and I'm sure you've let them know your views, and I'm sure Councillor Dexter and Oxborough will at the next Audit and Governance meeting. Councillor Mott, would you like item 2 withdrawn now, in light of what you've just heard? I don't want to upset the apple cart and we go back to January from November. It does stink. I completely
Does
agree.
Jury wish to comment while I consider?
Okay.
That's okay.
Right.
And perhaps, thank you, Leader, and perhaps Mrs. Buckler has already done this, but I wonder whether we might replace that with a recommendation that we write to the chair of the LGA Finance Committee and appraise them of the situation. I'm sure they're aware, but that might be something we want to consider.
I know at the LGA briefings I go to, it comes up every time. Everything. They just keep saying they can't get auditors. I don't know why, because they're obviously on quite a good money. But just being sensible about this, have so much as our work gone up to even vaguely justify the fees increase?
I think in part, the auditors have to audit areas of our accounts to the same standard as they would if we were, a company. They have to do a lot of work around fixed assets. They have to do a lot of work around pensions. There was a review done by Sir Tony Redman a few years ago where all of the accountants basically said, this is same amount of work does not need to be done in local authorities, because whatever the changes in valuation of our fixed assets, it doesn't have an impact on the council's bottom line. It doesn't have an impact on our income and expenditure account. Not in the same way that it would if you were a private sector company. However, unfortunately, the Redman review didn't make a recommendation that the amount of audit work could be scaled back for local authorities. I think what they are finding now is that unless they take that approach, the backlog will just get worse and worse and worse. And there has been very recently a letter from the MP, Lee Rowley, where they have said they are looking at how they can address the backlog. There is a national shortage of auditors. For whatever reason, young people are not attracted to the audit profession in the way that they would have been 20, 30 years ago. That there are other careers that people are looking to move into. Even though all of the top accountancy firms have very good graduate and apprenticeships, schemes, what they're finding is they're training people up and they just can't retain them.
that they're constantly advertising. So I think they also feel, you know, that this situation is getting a bit untenable. And one of the solutions from the government is that we try to clear the backlog of outstanding audits. We're in a very fortunate position. We have no backlog at all. All our accounts have been signed off, apart from the current year, which is in audit. But for councils that have got 2-3 years of their accounts not audited, what the government may allow them to do is to sign off those accounts in part. So, for example, if the auditors couldn't sign off the fixed assets section, they would say, well, we've signed your accounts off for every section apart from fixed assets, which is a bit of a compromise, but that is one of the areas that the government is looking at about how they can get rid of the backlogs that other councils have. Nationally, there are over 600 audit opinions still outstanding. We're not in that 600, but that's the scale of the problem nationally. And some councils have, you know, 2-3 years that haven't been signed off. So that's the difficulties, Leader. Thank you.
That's why some councils are getting into trouble. Councillor Edmonds.
I was just going to perhaps ask Mrs. Barker to comment on the value for money aspect of the audit as well, because there's some outstanding work there to be done.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Edmonds. Also in our conversation with Grant Thornton yesterday, they have confirmed that they've done their value for money work for 2021 and 21-22, and they are going to be bringing an annual audit report to the audit committee in December. And they have said that initial findings are that that audit report is going to be very positive. They are not going to be making any recommendations for improvement, and there will just be a couple of recommendations in there that all councils will have. So I look forward to a very positive report from the auditors going to the December Audit and Governance Committee. But yes, in terms of value for money, that they have done their work. They interviewed many officers in doing that and looked at a lot of our reports on our website as well to gain assurance around that. Thank you.
Well, that's excellent. And do we know if the audit scheduled for November, will they be able to do the value for money part of the audit at that time, or do you think that'll be, again, a second instalment?
I'm not sure. I think they're hoping to do it all in one, because they only have 1 year left of auditing us, and then we will move to Bishop Fleming. Bishop Fleming are very keen to start an interim audit in February, so that's why we are very keen to have finished with Grant Thornton in January, and then we can move on to our new auditors in February. Unfortunately, it doesn't give the finance team any sort of break because we'll be going straight from one to the other. But, you know, that is how it used to work years ago. We used to have an interim audit in February, getting ready for year end in March, so that we can start closing down in April. So to get back to that position where we've got an interim audit, which we haven't had for a couple of years, would be a very good practice.
Is that whopping great fee you described, is that what Bishop Fleming would be wanting as well?
Yes, that's correct. So that fee, which has gone from 52,000, which is what we will pay to Grant Thornton for this year's accounts, Bishop Fleming will be charging 132,000 when they start our 23-24 audit. And we will have Bishop Fleming for 5 years.
I wonder if we could perhaps make that conditional, that they get the full fee if they complete the audit within the allotted time, the deadline.
I agree with you, because builders, if they don't build on time, they have fees that they have to pay. Mrs. Buckle, is that possible? Or have you done your contract?
We don't enter into a contract with the auditors in that way, so it's done through public sector audit appointments, who are a national body. So the contract is with public sector audit appointments, not a direct contract between us and our external auditors. So unfortunately, there isn't that direct relationship that we can say, you know, if the audit's not finished, we're not paying it. Many councils have tried to do that in the past, and actually what happens is, yeah, you just get chased by the auditors, and in the end you have to pay. So unfortunately, yeah.
My apologies, Leader. It was a little tongue-in-cheek remark, but I'm sure you'll understand the sentiment.
Do totally, but you know, you do have to do it for other organisations. May I just ask, is that Bishop's Fleming's fee, or is that a government fee that Bishop's Fleming have to set?
The latter, Leader, yes. So nationally, public sector audit appointments will set the scale fee nationally. They have set that scale fee at £132,000. That probably is not what Bishop Fleming will receive, but that is what we are being charged. Yeah.
Councillor Dexter, please. Oh, sorry, Adam.
Yes, I did have an informal discussion with a partner of Bishop Fleming not long ago, and I was actually quite surprised that that was the case, because in the normal world, you engage your accountants, your auditors, and pay them. But as Lisa said, this is a national scale, a national procurement, that's it. And Bishop Fleming may or may not receive that fee. They'll receive the fee that they bid.
Thank you. Councillor Bridgewater.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would hope that for paying £130,000, we'll actually get our accounts done on time next year, so that's brilliant. And I'm also glad that we're leaving Grant Thornton, because obviously they can't provide the service for us at the moment. So it's just such a shame that our finance department is so good and is not getting the recognition, unfortunately, through our external auditors. So we'd just like to pass on my thanks to our financial team. Thank you.
Councillor Mott, back to you. You've had some thinking time.
I am happy to withdraw my recommendation, Chair, based on the update from our finance team. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Edmonds, are you happy for your recommendation to go forward? I'll second that for you then, Councillor Edmonds. Any debate, anybody, although we've already had it? All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mrs Buckle and Mrs Henstock and Councillor Edmonds for all the work that you do on the accounts and for using your begging and beseeching and imploring act. It's obviously catching in this authority. Things done, who cares? Right. Councillor, oh, you're all still there. Right. Capital Programme Monitoring as at 31st July 2023. Councillor Edmonds, please.
Thank you, Leader. The report confirms that as at the end of July, all capital projects are within their existing budget. Details of the capital expenditure against budget are set out in Appendix A, and members are reminded that this is an exempt item. You will note that 20% of the current year's profiled capital budget has been spent as at the end of July. The largest part of the expenditure for the first 4 months of the current financial year relates to the acquisition of 5 homes in Oakhampton as part of the Homes for Ukraine Guest, using funding from the Local Authority Housing Fund, Homes for Ukraine and Devon County Council. The capital budget for 24-25 includes a sum of £12.365 million for the Oakhampton Railway Transport Hub. The Council will carry out a fundamental review of all the capital schemes within the existing capital programme in late 2023 as part of the process of developing a new corporate strategy. A list of Section 106 deposits is shown in Appendix B, totalling £1.4 million as at the 31st of July this year, and the report recommendation is, Chair, that the Hub Committee resolves to endorse the contents of the report. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Any questions, anybody? No? Are you happy to remove your...
Chair, I move the recommendations which are on page 81 of the agenda papers.
I'm happy to second that. Any debate, anybody? No? All those in favour? Thank you very much
Unanimous. Thank you,
indeed.
Leader.
I'm sure this is Councillor Edmonds. So, month 4 revenue budget, please, Councillor Edmonds.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The report summarises income and expenditure variations as at the 31st of July against the approved annual budget with a forecasted year-end deficit of £37,000. Against a total budget of £8.5 million, I think we can say this is close to a break-even position. We should bear in mind that we're still at an early age in the year, so these forecasts may change over the course of the year. We continue to see a rising cost due to inflationary pressures, and with ongoing careful planning and management of the Council's cash funds, the finance team has been able to take advantage of higher interest rates to generate significant amounts of investment income that will help to partially offset increases in expenditure. The main budget variations are set out in Table 1 on pages 92 and 93 of the report, followed by explanatory notes for each item. I've already made reference to the impact of higher interest rates, and the table shows anticipated additional investment income of £530,000 compared to the budget set in February of this year. The impact of increased cost is reflected in a number of items, and combined with an anticipated reduction in planning income of £120,000 at the year end, results in an anticipated year-end expenditure variation of £833,000. Mrs Henstock and her team monitored budget performance monthly to identify variations and, when necessary, take prompt corrective action as detailed on page 96 of the report. And finally, Chair, the report recommends that the Hub Committee notes the forecast income and expenditure variations for the 2023-24 financial year and the overall projected deficit of £37,000.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I do. Sorry, Mrs Henstock. The I on 94, employment estates income. Do we know why we're not likely to meet and why it's likely to go up a bit more?
Thank you, Leader. That reflects the fact that we've actually built an additional income target in for 23-24 of £50,000. So income levels haven't really gone down, but we're not seeing us achieving that 50,000 additional income target at the minute. So we've done a straight line projection based on occupancy at the moment, but that could change as the year goes on. So we'll just keep that under close review.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, anybody? No. Councillor Edmonds, are you happy to
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation, which is on page 91 of the agenda papers.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that. All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous, the recommendation. Thank you, Leader.
We're nearly... Great. Mr Gardner. The next item is the medium-term financial strategy, 2024-25 to 26-27. Are you happy? Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Leader. The medium-term financial strategy has been prepared over a 3-year time frame, as the Leader has just said, from 2024-25 to 2026-27. The financial modelling in the report shows the forecast budget gap for 24-25 is in the region of £393,000, which is 4.4% of the Council's projected net budget for 24-25 of £8.97 million. The budget gap the year after 25-26 is a further 199,000, with a further budget gap of 939,000 in 26-27. Section 3 of the report sets out the assumptions for the financial modelling, such as that the business rates baseline reset will be deferred until 2026-27. It is assumed that the limits for council tax increases will remain at the higher of a £5 increase or 2.99% for 24-25 onwards. A business rates pooling gain of £200,000 has been modelled for the years 24-25 and 25-26. It's assumed that 24-25 will be another rollover settlement, which will give an amount of around £150,000 of NHB funding, new homes bonus, or a similar replacement housing incentive scheme that could be used to fund the 24-25 revenue-based budget. Our reserves levels, as I mentioned earlier, are at a prudent level, with unearmarked reserves totalling 1.569 million at the end of March, and earmarked reserves totalling 8.9 million also at the end of March 23. Further options for members' consideration of how to close the predicted budget gap of £393,000 will be presented as part of the 21st of November Hub Committee report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Any questions, please? Don't tell me, Councillor Edmonds, you had loads. And don't tell me that you had loads. Right, if there's no other questions, I'm assuming we're going to take the recommendations en bloc, all A and B of them. Would anybody like, I'll propose them. Will you second them, please? Thank you. Any debate, anybody, around those figures? No? Okay, all those in favour?
That is unanimous for both recommendations. Thank you.
And that's the end of the meeting. Thank you, everybody.